Imagine finding out your children were calmly sedated at their father's wedding by the court-appointed therapist who's about to become their new stepmother. That's the moment Sarah Mitchell, a Detroit mom working 3 jobs, stops playing by the rules. In the next hour, you'll step inside a custody war where therapy is a weapon, judges have secret investments, and a late-night live stream turns a private nightmare into national outrage. Was the private investigator ever on Sarah's side? Why does a respected doctor lose her license in one state and reappear in another? And when the restraining order expires at midnight, does a desperate mother break the law or break the cycle? Stay to hear the trap, the twist, and the price Sarah pays to pull 3 children back from the edge, and how that fight sparks a movement that reaches the state capitol. If this has you on the edge of your seat, hit like so more people find it, drop your prediction in the comments, share this with someone who loves high-stakes drama, and subscribe so you don't miss how the hunter becomes the hunted. Sarah Mitchell's hands trembled as she gripped the steering wheel of her beat-up Honda Civic, waiting for her next Uber passenger at Detroit Metro Airport, 3:27 in the morning, her third straight night driving after full shifts at the grocery store. The coffee had stopped working hours ago, but she needed another $40 to make rent. Her phone buzzed with a text from the babysitter. "Emma had another nightmare. She's asking for you." Sarah's chest tightened. Her 6-year-old daughter hadn't slept through the night since the custody battle began 2 years ago. None of the triplets had. Tyler had started wetting the bed again. Noah wouldn't speak at school. And Emma, her brave little Emma, woke up screaming for a mother who was working 3 jobs just to keep a moldy roof over their heads. The passenger door opened, flooding the car with harsh terminal light. A businessman in an expensive suit slid into the back seat, barely glancing up from his phone. The same kind of suit Ryan used to wear. The same dismissive silence Ryan perfected during their marriage. "Grosse Pointe, please," the man said, rattling off an address in the wealthy suburb where Sarah used to live, where her children were born, where her life fell apart. She typed the address with numb fingers and pulled into traffic. The radio played softly, some pop song about empowerment and rising above. Sarah turned it off. Empty words from people who'd never had their children ripped away by a system that favored whoever had the better lawyer. 20 minutes into the drive, her phone vibrated in the cup holder. Not a text this time, but an email notification from Ryan's lawyer. Sarah's stomach dropped. Nothing good ever came from Ryan's lawyer at 3 in the morning. She waited until the passenger exited in Grosse Pointe, leaving a $2 tip on a $40 ride, before opening the email. Her hands shook as she read. "Notice of modification to custody agreement. Petition for full physical and legal custody. Hearing scheduled." The legal terms blurred together. Sarah had learned this language the hard way, through countless hours in courtrooms and law libraries, trying to represent herself against Ryan's team of attorneys. But one phrase stood out like a scream. "Petitioner seeks to establish new maternal figure through pending marriage to Dr. Vanessa Blake, child psychology specialist." Sarah's vision tunneled. The same therapist the court had ordered the children to see, the one who'd been filing reports about Sarah's erratic behavior and inability to provide stable environment, and the one who'd somehow always scheduled sessions during Sarah's few visitation hours. A car honked behind her. She'd been sitting in the passenger's driveway for 5 minutes, engine running while her world collapsed again. She pulled away, driving on autopilot back toward the airport, when her phone rang. "Sarah?" It was Marcus Stone's voice, gravelly from cigarettes and late nights. Her childhood friend, now a private investigator, who'd been helping her pro bono. "You get the email?" "Yeah," her voice sounded hollow, even to herself. "There's more. Check your mailbox when you get home." "Marcus, I can't take any more tonight. You need to see this. Ryan's getting married this weekend. Big society wedding at the Bloomfield Hills Country Club. And Sarah," he paused, "the invitation is addressed to you and the kids." Sarah pulled into a gas station parking lot, her breathing shallow. "What?" "He wants you there. Both of you. It's some kind of power play. The invitation has a handwritten note." She closed her eyes. "What does it say?" Marcus's voice was gentle, which made it worse. "Bring the children. Their new mother wants to meet them." Sarah stared at the invitation on her kitchen table, its gold-embossed letters mocking her from across the scarred Formica surface. The Bloomfield Hills Country Club. Saturday, June 15th, 2 days away. The apartment around her seemed to shrink with each passing second. Water stains mapped territories across the ceiling. Black mold crept along the bathroom doorframe despite her endless scrubbing. The refrigerator wheezed like a dying animal. This was what the court called adequate housing in their custody evaluation. Her phone rang, the babysitter again. "Sarah, I'm sorry, but I can't watch them anymore after tonight. The caseworker came by asking questions. I can't risk my license." Another domino falling. Ryan's lawyers had been systematically eliminating her support system for months. 3 babysitters quit. 2 character witnesses suddenly became unavailable. Even her mother had started having doubts after a visit from a well-dressed woman asking concerns about the children's welfare. "I understand," Sarah managed. "Thank you for everything." She ended the call and looked at the clock. 4 hours until her shift at Kroger. 3 hours of sleep if she went to bed at now. Instead, she opened her laptop, the screen held together with duct tape, and started researching. Dr. Vanessa Blake, Yale undergraduate, Harvard Medical School, specialization in childhood trauma and custody evaluations, published papers on maternal alienation syndrome and the impact of unstable caregiving on development. Every article, every professional photo, every glowing recommendation was another nail in Sarah's coffin. This wasn't just any therapist. This was someone who'd built a career on cases exactly like this. Someone who knew precisely how to document, diagnose, and destroy a mother's credibility. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. A photo appeared on screen. Ryan and Vanessa at a charity gala, her children standing between them. Tyler in a tiny tuxedo, Emma in a dress Sarah could never afford. Noah actually smiling, something he hadn't done in months with her. The caption read, "They're happier here. You know it. We all know it. Do the right thing." Sarah ran to the bathroom and vomited, her empty stomach heaving bile. When she finally stopped shaking, she looked at herself in the mirror. Hollow eyes, skin gray from exhaustion, hair that hadn't been cut in a year. She looked exactly like what Ryan's lawyers painted her as, a woman falling apart. But in that moment, staring at her reflection, something shifted, a clarity born of having nothing left to lose. She called Marcus. "I need everything you have on Ryan's finances. Every record, every transaction, everything." "Sarah, I've been through it all. His lawyers have made sure everything looks clean." "Then look again. Nobody gets that rich that fast without cutting corners." Marcus sighed. "Even if I find something, what are you going to do with it? You can't afford a lawyer to file anything." "I don't need a lawyer. I just need the truth." "The truth doesn't matter if nobody listens." Sarah thought of Emma's nightmares, Tyler's bedwetting, Noah's silence. "Then I'll make them listen." She hung up and opened a new browser window, started researching Michigan recording laws, one-party consent state. She could record conversations legally. She pulled out an old digital recorder from her desk drawer, a relic from her marketing days when she'd recorded focus groups. The invitation stared up at her from the table. "Bring the children. Their new mother wants to meet them." Sarah picked up a pen and wrote on the RSVP card, "We'll be there." Marcus's office occupied the second floor of a strip mall between a cash for gold shop and a Vietnamese restaurant. Sarah climbed the narrow stairs, her legs heavy from another sleepless night. She'd called in sick to Kroger, knowing it might cost her the job, but she needed answers before tomorrow's wedding. Marcus sat behind a desk covered in coffee stains and file folders, his face drawn with concern. At 42, he looked 60, worn down by too many cases of cheating spouses and insurance fraud. But he'd known Sarah since they were kids in the same trailer park, before she'd escaped to college, before Ryan had swept her into a different world, and before that world had expelled her back to where she started. "Show me what you found," Sarah said without preamble. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Sarah, maybe you should sit down." "Just show me." He turned his laptop screen toward her. Bank statements filled the screen, but not the ones she expected. These were from offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, routed through shell companies with generic names like MRI Holdings and Castle Ventures. How did you get these? I have a contact at the SEC. They've been watching Ryan for 2 years. These transfers match exactly with pension funds that went missing from 3 Detroit unions. Sarah's pulse quickened. He stole from union pensions? Technically, his hedge fund managed the pensions. When they lost value, he told the unions it was market volatility. But look, Marcus highlighted specific transfers. Every loss corresponds with a deposit to these offshore accounts. He's been bleeding them dry and blaming the economy. Sarah grabbed the laptop, scrolling through transaction after transaction. 3 million here, 5 million there, all dated during their marriage. All while she was home with the babies, believing his stories about working late to secure their future. This is it, she breathed. This proves everything, Barney. We take this to the FBI, the wedding gets canceled, I get my kids back. Marcus's expression didn't change. Sarah, what? This is evidence of federal crimes. They have to investigate. They are investigating. Have been for 18 months. But these things take years to prosecute. By the time it goes to trial, Vanessa will have adopted your kids. Sarah stood up so fast her chair fell backward. Then I'll go to the press. The Detroit Free Press would love this story. Rich hedge fund managers stealing from working families. You think Ryan doesn't have connections there too? You think they'll run a story based on illegally obtained documents from a bitter ex-wife? Then I'll confront him myself, record him admitting it. Marcus stood up, walking around the desk. Sarah, listen to me. I know you're desperate. But if you confront Ryan with this, if you threaten him, he'll spin it as extortion. You'll be the one getting arrested. Sarah laughed, bitter and sharp. So I'm supposed to do nothing? Watch him marry the woman who's stealing my children? Let him win? I'm saying be smart. Wait for the FBI to act. I don't have time to wait. The words ripped from her throat. Every day my kids are with him, she's poisoning them against me. Emma asked me last week why I don't love them enough to give them a nice home. Noah won't even look at me during visitations. They're disappearing, Marcus. My babies are disappearing, and nobody cares. Marcus put a hand on her shoulder. I care. That's why I'm telling you not to do anything stupid. Sarah shrugged him off, grabbing the laptop. I need copies of everything. Sarah, no. I'm not asking. She pulled out a thumb drive, starting to copy files. You can either help me or get out of my way. Marcus watched her for a long moment, then sighed. At least let me go with you if you're going to confront him. Fine, tomorrow at the wedding, public place, lots of witnesses. That's insane. No, it's perfect. He won't make a scene at his own wedding, and when he admits what he did, I'll have it all recorded. Marcus rubbed his face. This is a mistake. Sarah pocketed the thumb drive. My whole life has been a mistake. At least this one's mine to make. She headed for the door, then stopped. Marcus, thank you. For everything. You're the only person who hasn't abandoned me. He gave her a sad smile. Yeah, about that. But she was already went clattering down the stairs with renewed purpose. Tomorrow she would face Ryan at his wedding. Tomorrow she would expose the truth. Tomorrow she would save her children. She didn't see Marcus pick up his phone as she left. Didn't hear him dial a familiar number. Didn't hear him say, she took the bait, she has the documents. Tomorrow at the wedding, just like you planned. Sarah stood outside Bloomfield Hills Country Club at 2 in the afternoon, her hand gripping the small digital recorder in her pocket. She'd spent her last $60 on a dress from Goodwill, navy blue and simple, trying to look presentable enough that security wouldn't immediately throw her out. The triplets stood beside her, fidgeting in their borrowed clothes. She'd managed to pick them up for her scheduled visitation, telling the supervised visitation center she was taking them to a family event. Not technically a lie. Why are we at Daddy's party? Emma asked, tugging at her dress. We're just going to say hello, Sarah said, kneeling down to their level. Remember what we practiced? Stay close to Mommy. Tyler nodded solemnly, but Noah just stared at the ground. He'd been withdrawing more each week, and Sarah's heart broke every time she saw the light dimming in his eyes. They walked through the entrance, past the valet stand where Bentleys and Mercedes lined up like expensive dominoes. The receptionist looked up with a practiced smile that faltered when she saw Sarah's off-the-rack dress. "We're on the list," Sarah said firmly. "Sarah Mitchell and children." The woman checked her tablet, eyebrows rising. "Oh, yes, you're expected. The ceremony is in the garden pavilion." Sarah felt hundreds of eyes on her as they walked through the club. Whispers followed in their wake. "Is that the ex-wife? Why would she come? Those poor children." The garden pavilion sprawled across manicured lawns, white silk draping between classical columns. Hundreds of guests in designer clothing sipped champagne while a string quartet played. Sarah spotted politicians she recognized from the news, CEOs whose companies dominated Detroit's skyline, and judges who presided over the county courts, including Judge Patricia Wells, who'd overseen their custody case. Ryan stood near the altar in a Tom Ford tuxedo, laughing with his groomsmen. When he saw Sarah, his smile widened, not with warmth, but with satisfaction, like a chess player watching his opponent walk into checkmate. Vanessa emerged from a cluster of bridesmaids, resplendent in a dress that probably cost more than Sarah made in a year. She glided over, her smile perfect and poisonous. "Sarah, how wonderful you could make it." Her voice carried just enough to ensure nearby guests could hear. "And the children look so sweet." Emma pressed against Sarah's leg. Even at 6, she could sense predators. "Dr. Blake," Sarah said evenly, "please call me Vanessa. After all, we're going to be family." She knelt down to the children's 11 mom. "Hello, my darlings. I've missed you so much since our last session." "You said Mommy was sick." Noah spoke for the first time in hours, his voice small but clear. "But she's not sick." Vanessa's smile never wavered. "Sometimes sickness isn't something we can see, sweetheart." Sarah's hand tightened on the recorder. "I need to speak with Ryan, privately." "Of course, Ryan, darling." Ryan sauntered over, champagne flute in hand. "Sarah, so glad you could witness this. The beginning of our children's real future. We need to talk about your business." His eyes glinted. "My business? How interesting. Vanessa, why don't you take the children to see the cake? It's shaped like a castle." "I want to stay with Mommy," Emma protested. "Go ahead, baby," Sarah said softly. "I'll be right here." She watched Vanessa lead them away, every instinct screaming to follow. But she needed this conversation, needed Ryan's confession. "So," Ryan said, guiding her toward a quiet corner, "what about my business?" Sarah activated the recorder in her pocket. "I know about the pension funds, the offshore accounts, all of it." Ryan sipped his champagne. "Do you? How fascinating. And what exactly do you think you know?" "You stole millions from union workers. I have proof." "Proof," he said the word like it amused him. "You mean the documents Marcus gave you? The ones his contact at the SEC supposedly leaked?" Sarah's blood chilled. "How did you?" "Oh, Sarah, still so naive. Marcus came to me months ago, broke, desperate, owing money to people who break legs for late payments. I offered him a deal, 50,000 to feed you false information, to give you hope and then document your increasingly erratic behavior." The ground seemed to tilt. "No, Marcus wouldn't." "Wouldn't he? Ask yourself, how does a failed private investigator suddenly get SEC documents? How convenient that he found exactly what you needed right before the wedding." Sarah pulled out her phone with shaking hands, calling Marcus. It went straight to voicemail. She tried again. Nothing. Ryan laughed. "He's probably on a beach somewhere, enjoying his payment. See, I needed you to do something stupid. Something that would prove once and for all that you're unstable. And threatening me with fake documents at my wedding? Well, that's pretty stupid. They're not fake. The transfers, the shell companies, all real. All perfectly legal investments that my lawyers can explain in exhaustive detail. But you, recording me without consent, making threats, disrupting my wedding." He pulled out his own phone. "I think it's time we called the police. Michigan is a one-party consent state. I can record. Not on private property where there's an expectation of privacy. The country club has very strict rules. And look," he pointed to a discreet sign by the entrance. "Notice, private event, no recording devices." Sarah's knees weakened. She'd walked into every trap, but the worst was yet to come. "Mommy!" Emma's scream cut through the air. Sarah spun to see her daughter pulling away from Vanessa, running toward her. But something was wrong. Emma was stumbling, her movements uncoordinated. "What did you do?" Sarah ran to her daughter, catching her as she fell. Vanessa approached calmly. "She had a panic attack. I gave her something to calm down. A very mild sedative, perfectly safe. I'm a doctor, remember?" Sarah looked at her daughter's dilated pupils, her sluggish responses, then at Tyler and Noah, both swaying slightly, both with the same glazed look. "You drugged my children?" "I administered appropriate medical intervention for acute anxiety. It's all documented in their therapy files. Their anxiety always peaks around you, Sarah. It's really quite sad." Security guards were approaching now, their faces stern. Real police wouldn't be far behind. Ryan leaned in close. "You're going to walk out of here quietly. You're going to leave the children with their therapist. And you're going to never come near us again. Or I'll have you arrested for disruption, trespassing, and attempted extortion. Your choice." Sarah sat in the holding cell at Oakland County Jail, the fluorescent lights buzzing like angry wasps above her head. 6 hours since the arrest. 6 hours since she'd watched her drugged children being led away by Vanessa. 6 hours of replaying every mistake, every moment she should have seen the trap closing. The metal bench bit into her spine. Around her, other women slumped in various stages of despair or defiance. A sex worker with a black eye. A woman muttering to herself about government conspiracies. Another mother like her, who'd violated a restraining order to see her kids. "Mitchell," a guard called. "You made bail." Sarah looked up, confused. She didn't have bail money. She didn't have anyone left to call. The guard led her through processing, returning her personal effects, the pitiful collection of her life. A dead phone, $11 in cash, keys to an apartment she'd probably been evicted from by now, and the recorder that had doomed her. In the lobby, a woman in an expensive suit waited. Not anyone Sarah recognized. She was in her 50s, sharp-featured, with eyes that had seen too much. "Ms. Mitchell, I'm Janet Crawford. I'm an attorney. I can't afford a lawyer." "You're not paying. Consider me a concerned citizen. We need to talk. Privately." They walked to a coffee shop across the street, Janet buying 2 cups while Sarah sat in a daze. Nothing made sense anymore. Every lifeline had been a noose. "You were set up," Janet said without preamble. "But you probably figured that out." "Who are you?" "Someone who's been watching Ryan Mitchell for a very long time. Someone who knows exactly what he's capable of." "FBI? SEC? "No, more personal than that." Janet pulled out a tablet, showing Sarah a photograph. A young woman, pretty, smiling. "This was my daughter, Rebecca. She worked at Ryan's firm 5 years ago, fresh out of college, brilliant, ready to conquer the world." Was. Sarah noticed the past tense. She discovered discrepancies in the pension fund management. Tried to report it. Ryan destroyed her, not just professionally, but psychologically. He had her committed, claimed she was having a psychotic break. The drugs they gave her in the psychiatric facility, she never recovered. She took her own life 3 months after release. Sarah's hands trembled around the coffee cup. "I'm sorry. I've been trying to bring him down ever since, but he's careful, protected, connected." Janet leaned forward. "Until now, you rattled him today, made him overplay his hand. He won. He has my children." "No," he revealed his methods. "Vanessa drugging children at a public event? That's assault. Recording you in a 2-party consent situation while violating the venue's own policies? That's entrapment. Marcus taking money to provide false evidence? That's fraud. None of it matters if no one believes me." Janet pulled out another document. "This is a report from Child Protective Services. Filed 2 hours ago. 3 children taken to the emergency room presenting symptoms of benzodiazepine overdose." Sarah's heart stopped. "What?" "Vanessa miscalculated the dosage. Children metabolize drugs differently than adults. Your kids are okay, but they had to be hospitalized. It's all documented, blood tests, toxicology reports, everything." "Where are they now?" Still at the hospital. Ryan's lawyers are spinning it as an allergic reaction to wedding cake, but the blood work doesn't lie." Sarah stood up. "I need to see them." "You can't. There's a restraining order now. If you go near them, you'll be arrested again." Then what am I supposed to do? Janet's expression hardened. We fight, but not the way you've been fighting. Not alone, not desperate, not walking into traps. We do this strategically. With what resources? I have nothing left. You have something Ryan never expected you to have. The truth. And now, finally, proof that even his money can't bury. Sarah's phone, finally charged, exploded with notifications, messages from numbers she didn't recognize. She opened one. Saw the video of your children being drugged at the wedding. Shared to my mom's group. We're with you. What video? Janet smiled for the first time. Every guest at that wedding had a phone. Ryan can't control them all. The footage is already viral. Hashtag Save Sarah's Kids is trending. Sarah searched the hashtag. Dozens of videos from different angles. Emma screaming for her mother. The children stumbling, clearly drugged. Security dragging Sarah away while she begged to help her kids. And clearest of all, Vanessa's calm admission that she'd sedated them. He'll spin this, Sarah said. He's trying. But public opinion is turning. 3 innocent children drugged at a society wedding? That's not a story his PR team can bury. Sarah watched the view count climb. Thousands, tens of thousands. Comments pouring in from parents horrified at what they were seeing. It won't matter, she said quietly. Judge Wells is in his pocket. She's been ruling in his favor from the beginning. Janet's smile widened. About that, Judge Wells has a problem. She's been investing in Ryan's hedge fund illegally, using information from cases she presided over to make investment decisions. That's judicial misconduct and insider trading. How do you know? Because I've been tracking every transaction, every connection, every dirty deal for 5 years. I couldn't move before because I needed proof of a pattern. Your case provides that proof. Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in 2 years. Hope. Dangerous, terrifying hope. What do you need from me? Everything. Every document, every recording, every text message. We're going to build a case that doesn't just get your kids back. We're going to destroy the entire network that enabled this. And if we fail? Janet's expression grew dark. Then we'll have confirmation that the system is completely broken, but at least we'll have fought. That's more than Rebecca got to do. Sarah looked at the videos again. Her children, drugged and stumbling. The image that would haunt her forever, but also evidence. Undeniable, viral, powerful evidence. When do we start? Now we have 48 hours before the emergency custody hearing. Ryan's lawyers will try to bury this. We're going to make sure the whole world is watching when they do. The emergency custody hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. Monday in Judge Patricia Wells's courtroom. Sarah sat beside Janet Crawford, wearing the same dress from the wedding because it was the only court-appropriate clothing she owned. Across the aisle, Ryan lounged in a fresh suit, Vanessa beside him in designer sunglasses, playing the victim. The gallery was packed. Reporters, social media influencers who'd picked up the viral story, and mothers from various advocacy groups. Judge Wells looked displeased at the attention. This hearing is to address the emergency motion regarding custody of the 3 minor children, Judge Wells began, her voice sharp. I'll remind everyone that family court proceedings are sensitive matters deserving of discretion. Janet stood. Your Honor, given the public nature of the incident at the Bloomfield Hills Country Club, witnessed by over 300 guests and now viewed by millions online, discretion seems moot. Ms. Crawford, you're not the attorney of record for Ms. Mitchell. I'm filing my appearance now, Your Honor, pro bono representation. Ryan's lead attorney, David Sterling, stood. We object to Ms. Crawford's involvement. She has a personal vendetta against my client stemming from unrelated matters. Those matters being your client's systematic destruction of my daughter, which resulted in her death? Janet's voice was ice. Judge Wells banged her gavel. Ms. Crawford, you're treading on thin ice. Mr. Sterling, your objection is noted but overruled. Proceed. Sterling straightened his tie. Your Honor, the events at the wedding have been grossly mischaracterized. Dr. Blake administered a mild antihistamine to help 3 children experiencing allergic reactions. The hospital records confirm all 3 children presented with symptoms consistent with allergic response. To what allergen? Janet challenged. Wedding cake containing trace amounts of tree nuts. Janet pulled out a document. The hospital's toxicology report shows benzodiazepine levels in all three children's blood. Are you suggesting the wedding cake was seasoned with Xanax? Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Judge Wells frowned at the document. How did you obtain sealed medical records? They're not sealed, Your Honor. They're part of the public police report filed when the hospital reported suspected child endangerment. Sarah watched Ryan's confident expression falter slightly. Vanessa shifted in her seat. Sterling recovered quickly. Dr. Blake is a licensed physician. Any medication administered was within her scope of practice in medical judgment. Is it within her scope of practice to sedate children without parental consent? Janet pressed. She had consent, Mr. Mitchell, as the custodial parent. Joint custody, Janet interrupted. Ms. Mitchell shares medical decision-making authority. She was present and explicitly did not consent. Judge Wells intervened. The court is more concerned with the pattern of behavior from Ms. Mitchell. Showing up at her ex-husband's wedding, causing a disruption, making wild accusations that proved true when three children ended up in the emergency room. Ms. Crawford, you're testing my patience. Janet pulled out her tablet. Your Honor, I'd like to submit evidence of systematic bias in this case. Sterling shot to his feet. Objection. This is an emergency custody hearing, not a judicial review. It becomes relevant when the judge's financial interests directly conflict with fair ruling. The courtroom went silent. Judge Wells's face flushed red. Ms. Crawford, that's a serious accusation. It's not an accusation, it's documented fact. Would you like me to detail your investments in Mitchell Capital Management? The $47,000 in returns over the past 2 years, all while presiding over this custody case? Chambers, now, both counsels. As the lawyers disappeared with the judge, Sarah felt the room spinning. Everything hung on this moment. If Wells maintained control, she was finished. 20 minutes later, they emerged. Judge Wells looked pale. Due to potential appearances of impropriety, I'm recusing myself from this case. The matter will be reassigned to Judge Michael Chen for immediate review. Court is adjourned. The gallery erupted. Reporters rushed forward. Ryan stormed out, Vanessa trailing behind. Sterling whispered furiously into Penya's phone. Janet turned to Sarah with the first genuine smile she'd seen. Round one to us. What happens now? Judge Chen is clean, tough but fair. He'll review everything with fresh eyes, but Ryan won't go down easy. He'll escalate. Sarah's phone buzzed, unknown number. She almost ignored it, then saw the message preview. This is Marcus. I'm sorry, we need to talk. It's about the kids. She showed Janet, who frowned. It's a trap. What if it's not? What if he knows something? Sarah, he betrayed you once already. But Sarah was already typing back. Where? The response was immediate. Your old apartment. 1 hour. Come alone. They're planning something worse. Janet grabbed her arm. Don't do this. If there's even a chance he has information about my kismate, I have to. Then I'm coming with you. He said alone. Sarah, this is exactly how you got into trouble before. Trusting the wrong people. Sarah looked at the message again. Something worse. What could be worse than what had already happened? She was about to find out. Sarah climbed the stairs to her old apartment, each step echoing with memories of carrying her babies up these same steps, exhausted but hopeful. The hallway smelled of mildew and cooking grease, familiar and nauseating. Marcus stood outside her former door, looking haggard. He'd lost weight, his clothes hanging loose, dark circles under his eyes like bruises. You came, he said. You have 2 minutes. Sarah, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He threatened more than just breaking my legs. He had photos of my daughter at her school. Said he'd hurt her if I didn't cooperate. So you chose your daughter over my 3 children? Marcus's face crumpled. I didn't know he drugged them. I swear I didn't know it would go that far. What do you want, Marcus? To warn you, Ryan's not just trying to take the kids. He's setting you up for something bigger. Vanessa has been recording all her sessions with the children, editing them to make it look like they disclosed abuse. Sarah's blood chilled. What kind of abuse? Physical, sexual. She's splicing audio using deepfake technology, making it sound like the kids are describing things you did to them. That's insane. No court would believe. With expert testimony from a renowned child psychologist, with recordings of the children's own voices, Sarah, he's gonna have you registered as a sex offender. You'll never see them again. You'll go to prison. Sarah leaned against the wall, her legs suddenly unable to hold her. When? Tomorrow. New hearing with Judge Chen. They're going to present it as new evidence discovered during therapy. We have to stop it. You have to testify about what you know. Marcus laughed bitterly. With what credibility? I already took a bribe. I'm compromised. My testimony would make things worse. Then what am I supposed to do? Run. Take the kids and run. Tonight. I can't get near them. There's a restraining order. It expires at midnight. Clerical error in the paperwork. You have a window from midnight to 8 a.m. before the corrected order goes through. I can tell you where they'll be. Ryan's taking them to his lake house. Security is minimal there. Sarah stared at him. You're suggesting I kidnap my own children? I'm suggesting you save them from a monster. Sarah, I've seen what he's planning. The edited recordings are just the beginning. Vanessa has been gradually increasing their medication doses. She's going to keep them sedated, compliant, until they can't remember what's real anymore. This is insane. This is Ryan. Marcus pulled out a flash drive. Everything's on here. The real recordings from Vanessa's sessions, the editing software she used, email exchanges between her and Ryan planning this. It's all illegally obtained, inadmissible in court. But it's the truth. Sarah took the drive with trembling fingers. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't, but you don't have another choice. He handed her a piece of paper. Lake House address, security code. They'll be asleep by midnight. The kids' rooms are on the second floor, east wing. If this is another trap, then I'm already dead. Ryan will kill me for giving you this. Marcus turned to leave, then stopped. Sarah, I know it doesn't mean anything now, but you were the best person I ever knew. You deserve better than all of us. He disappeared down the stairwell, leaving Sarah alone with an impossible choice. Take her children and become a fugitive, proving Ryan's claims about her instability, or let them stay and watch them disappear into Vanessa's pharmaceutical fog. Her phone rang. Janet. Sarah, where are you? Judge Chen wants to meet with both parties informally before tomorrow's hearing. This is good news. Janet, I need you to look at something. Sarah described Marcus's claims, the flash drive, everything. Silence, then. Sarah, this sounds like another setup. Think about it. An expiring restraining order, minimal security, it's too convenient. But what if it's real? What if they're really going to frame me for abuse? Then we fight it legally. Judge Chen is fair. He'll see through edited recordings. And if he doesn't, Sarah, if you take those children tonight, you become everything Ryan says you are. Unstable, dangerous, criminal. Sarah stood in the hallway, the flash drive burning in her hand. Through the thin walls, she could hear a baby crying in another apartment, a mother's voice singing softly to soothe it. I need to think, she told Janet. Sarah, promise me you won't do anything rash. I promise, Sarah lied. She hung up and walked to her car, the plan already forming. Not to kidnap her children, but something else. Something that would expose the truth in a way no one could deny or edit or spin. She drove to an electronics store, using her last credit card to buy 3 small cameras, the kind used for home security. Then to a costume shop, where she purchased a wig and service worker uniform. If she couldn't take her children, she could at least document what was really happening in that lake house. And if Ryan wanted to destroy her with recordings, she'd return the favor. The trap was set, but this time Sarah would be the one setting it. Midnight at Ryan's lake house. Sarah crouched in the shadows beside the service entrance, her heart pounding so hard she was sure it would trigger the security system. The service uniform and wig had gotten her past the gate, claiming to be emergency cleaning staff for the wedding aftermath. But the house was dark, silent, too silent. She entered the security code Marcus had given her. It worked. Too easy, her mind screamed. but she was past the point of no return. The interior was all marble and glass, moonlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Sarah placed the first camera in the main hallway, tiny and invisible against the crown molding. The second in the kitchen, aimed at the breakfast nook where she knew the children ate. She climbed the stairs, each creak sounding like thunder. East Wing, the children's rooms. She could hear them breathing, soft and steady. Her hands trembled as she reached for the door handle. Don't. Vanessa's voice, calm and cold. Sarah spun. Vanessa stood at the end of the hallway in a silk robe, holding a tablet that showed security camera feeds. Multiple angles of Sarah breaking in. Marcus told us you'd come, Vanessa said. Just like we paid him to. Although the part about running away with the children was his improvisation. We simply wanted you on camera breaking the restraining order. Sarah's mind raced. The cameras she'd planted were still recording. If she could get Vanessa to admit the truth. Why? Sarah asked. Why do this to children? Your whole career is supposedly about helping them. Vanessa laughed, soft and musical. My career is about understanding them, how malleable they are, how easily shaped. Your children are particularly interesting subjects. Subjects? For my next book, Therapeutic Intervention in High Conflict Custody, a case study. It'll establish me as the premier expert in the field. Ryan gets his perfect family, I get professional acclaim and a very wealthy husband. You're experimenting on my children? I'm treating them. The fact that treatment requires certain adjustments to their memories and perceptions is simply part of the process. Sarah stepped forward. The drugs you're giving them are perfectly calibrated, enough to make them compliant, not enough to cause permanent damage. Although, Vanessa tilted her head, Noah is showing some resistance. We may need to increase his dosage. You're monsters. We're practical. Your children were always going to end up with Ryan. The only question was whether you'd be a cautionary tale or a footnote. The lights suddenly blazed on. Ryan appeared fully dressed, phone in hand. Police are on their way, Sarah. Breaking and entering, violation of a restraining order, attempted kidnapping. You're looking at 10 years minimum. But Sarah smiled. You're right. I'm probably going to prison. But not for 10 years. She pulled out her phone, showing a live stream. 4,000 viewers and climbing. Every word Vanessa had just said broadcast live to the internet. Vanessa's face drained of color. You streamed this? To every mother's rights group, every family court reform advocate, every journalist who covered the wedding. They heard everything. Your experiments, the drugging, all of it. Ryan lunged for her phone, but Sarah threw it down the stairs where it continued streaming as it tumbled. It doesn't matter, Ryan snarled. It's inadmissible, recorded without consent. In court, yes, but in the court of public opinion? Sarah looked at Vanessa. How many patients will you have after this? How many conferences will invite you to speak? Sirens wailed in the distance. But also, Sarah could hear something else. Car doors slamming, voices shouting. She looked out the window to see news vans pulling up, reporters already setting up shots. You called them, Ryan said, his voice hollow. No, the internet did. 4,000 witnesses tend to do that. The police burst in, weapons drawn. Everyone freeze! She broke in, Ryan shouted. Arrest her! But behind the police came someone else. Judge Chen, in jeans and a hastily thrown-on jacket, followed by 2 FBI agents. Judge Chen! Ryan's lawyer Sterling appeared from another room, clearly having been waiting for this moment. This is highly irregular. What's irregular, Judge Chen said, holding up his phone showing the live stream, is a licensed psychologist admitting to drugging children for experimental purposes. Agent Martinez? The FBI agent stepped forward. Dr. Vanessa Blake, you're under arrest for practicing medicine without a license in the state of Michigan. What? I have a license? In California, which was suspended 2 years ago for unethical treatment of minors. You never obtained Michigan licensing, making every prescription you wrote fraud. They cuffed Vanessa as she sputtered protests. Ryan backed away, but the second agent blocked him. Ryan Mitchell, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit child endangerment. This is entrapment. She set us up. Judge Chen looked at Sarah, who was also being cuffed for the break-in. Ms. Mitchell, you're under arrest for criminal trespass. However, he turned to the officers. Given the emergency nature of the situation and evidence of immediate danger to the children, I'm releasing her on her own recognizance pending review. Sarah's cuffs were removed. She stood there, shaking, as they led Ryan and Vanessa away. Sterling followed, already on his phone with damage control. The children, Sarah whispered, are being taken to the hospital for evaluation, Judge Chen said. Then to emergency foster care until we can sort this out. Foster care? But I'm their mother. Who just committed a crime, justified or not? I'm sorry, Ms. Mitchell. The law doesn't allow for vigilante justice, even when the system fails. Sarah watched them carry her sleeping children to waiting ambulances, their small bodies limp from Vanessa's drugs. She'd saved them from one nightmare only to deliver them to another. Janet arrived, running from her car. Sarah, what have you done? What I had to. You've given them ammunition for appeal, entrapment, coercion, illegal recording. I gave the world the truth. The truth doesn't always win in court. Sarah looked at the news cameras, the reporters going live with breaking news, the live stream still climbing past 50,000 viewers. Maybe not, but at least now everyone knows what kind of parents the court was choosing. That has to count for something. 6 months later, Sarah sat in a sterile room at the Washtenaw County Family Services Building. Across from her, Emma, Tyler, and Noah worked on puzzles with their foster mother, Mrs. Rodriguez, a kind woman who'd been caring for them during the legal nightmare. 5 more minutes, the supervisor said gently. 5 more minutes of the 2 hours a week Sarah was allowed with her children. Supervised visitation, the judge's compromise after everything fell apart. Ryan was out on bail, his lawyers successfully arguing that the live stream constituted entrapment. Vanessa had pled to lesser charges, receiving probation and mandatory counseling instead of jail time. Her book deal, ironically, had gone through, publishers eager to capitalize on the scandal. But the real tragedy sat in front of Sarah. Her children, who looked at her like a stranger. The drugs Vanessa had given them, combined with months of psychological manipulation, had left deep scars. Emma no longer ran to her. Tyler didn't speak during visits. Noah had developed severe anxiety that required medication, real medication, prescribed by real doctors trying to undo Vanessa's damage. Mommy has to go now, Sarah said softly, her voice breaking. Emma looked up. Are you coming back? Next week, baby, I'll always come back. That's what Daddy said too. The words cut deeper than any court ruling. Ryan's parental rights had been suspended pending trial, but the damage was done. The children trusted no one fully, existing in a limbo of foster care while the courts decided their fate. Janet had filed appeals, lawsuits, every legal remedy available. The public outcry had been enormous. Hashtag Justice for Sarah's Kids had trended for weeks. Donations poured in for legal fees. Documentary filmmakers circled, wanting to tell the story, but none of it gave Sarah her children back. She walked to her car, the same beat-up Civic she'd been driving that night the invitation arrived. Her phone rang. Janet. Judge Chen wants to see us. Chambers? Informal. Another hearing? No, something else. He said to bring the foster mother and the children. Sarah's heart clenched. Are they taking them further away? I don't know, but he said it was urgent. An hour later, they sat in Judge Chen's chambers. No court reporter, no formal procedures. Just the judge, looking tired, and a woman Sarah didn't recognize. Ms. Mitchell, Judge Chen began, this is Dr. Patricia Hoffman from the State Psychology Board. She's been reviewing your case, specifically the damage done to your children. Dr. Hoffman leaned forward. Ms. Mitchell, I've evaluated your children extensively. The trauma they have experienced, not just from the drugging, but from the entire custody battle, will take years to heal. Sarah felt the walls closing in. They were going to recommend permanent removal. She could feel it. However, Dr. Hoffman continued, the one consistent factor in their recovery has been their response to you. Even with limited contact, they show measurable improvement after your visits. Their stress hormones decrease. Their sleep patterns stabilize. What are you saying? Judge Chen cleared his throat. The system failed you, Ms. Mitchell. It failed your children. The traditional remedies, foster care, supervised visitation, They're causing more harm, so we're proposing something unconventional. He pulled out a document. Therapeutic reunification. You and the children would live in a specialized facility for 6 months. Daily therapy, supervised but together. If successful, full custody would be restored. Sarah's hands shook. Together? All of us? It's experimental, Der Hoffman admitted. Involuntary. You'd have to agree to intensive therapy yourself, addressing your trauma from the marriage and custody battle. When? Tomorrow, if you agree. Sarah looked at her children through the window. Emma was showing Noah her puzzle. Tyler was humming, something he only did when severely stressed. Yes, she said without hesitation. Yes to everything. Mrs. Rodriguez brought the children in. Judge Chen knelt to their level. How would you guys like to live with your mom again? In a special house where people will help everyone feel better? Emma's eyes widened. Really? Mommy too? Mommy too. For the first time in 6 months, Emma smiled. Really smiled. She ran to Sarah, wrapping her small arms around her mother's neck. Don't leave again, Emma whispered. Never, Sarah promised. Never again. Tyler and Noah joined the hug, tentative at first, then with growing confidence. They were strangers still, damaged and wary, but they were together. It wasn't justice. It wasn't victory. Ryan would likely never see significant jail time. Vanessa would rebuild her practice elsewhere. The system that had failed them would continue failing others. But it was a beginning. 1 year later, Sarah stood in a simple apartment, watching her children play in their shared bedroom. Not a luxury home, not the suburban dream she'd once imagined, but theirs. Earned through 6 months of intensive therapy, countless hearings, and the slow, painful process of rebuilding trust. Emma was teaching Noah a card game, her voice patient as he struggled with the rules. Tyler built elaborate Lego structures, humming contentedly, a sound that now meant peace instead of stress. They were different children than before, bearing invisible scars that would never fully fade, but they were healing. Mom, look! Tyler held up his creation, a family of Lego figures in a small house. It's us. It's perfect, baby. Her phone buzzed. Janet, sending a news link. Thought you should see this. Sarah opened it reluctantly. She'd stopped following news about Ryan and Vanessa months ago, choosing healing over anger. But the headline made her freeze. Mitchell Capital Management declares bankruptcy after mass investor withdrawal. The article detailed Ryan's fall. After the live stream went viral, investors had fled. The FBI investigation, while not resulting in major criminal charges, had exposed enough financial irregularities to trigger SEC sanctions. His assets were frozen, his reputation destroyed. He'd lost everything. There was a photo of him leaving court, looking gaunt, diminished. No designer suit, no smirk, no power. Just a hollow man facing the consequences of his choices. Sarah felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication. The man who'd nearly destroyed her had destroyed himself, and it didn't make her children's nightmares stop or erase the years of struggle. Another text, this time from Marcus. She almost deleted it unread, then saw the preview. I know you'll never forgive me. She opened it fully. I know you'll never forgive me, and I'm not asking you to. I'm writing from rehab. Alcohol, gambling, all the things I used to numb the guilt. I wanted you to know I testified. Finally. Told the FBI everything about Ryan's operations. It won't undo what I did, but maybe it helps others. I'm sorry, Sarah, for everything. She deleted the message without responding. Some bridges couldn't be rebuilt. Mommy? Noah appeared at her side, slipping his small hand into hers. Are you sad? No, baby. Just thinking. About Daddy? The children never asked about Ryan anymore. He existed in their past like a bad dream, discussed only in therapy, processed and released bit by bit. About how strong you all are, she said, kneeling down, and how proud I am of you. We're proud of you too, Emma. Ojo said, joining them, and Dr. Hoffman says you're the bravest mom she knows. Sarah pulled them all close, breathing in the smell of their shampoo, feeling their heartbeats against hers. They'd lost so much, all of them. Innocence, trust, years they couldn't get back. But they'd found something too. Resilience, truth, each other. The doorbell rang. Sarah tensed, still conditioned to expect bad news. But it was Dr. Hoffman, making her monthly check-in. "How's everyone doing?" "Good days and bad days," Sarah answered honestly. "That's normal. That's healing." Dr. Hoffman smiled at the children. "I brought someone who wants to meet you all." A woman emerged from behind her, young, nervous, clutching a folder. She looked familiar somehow. "This is Jennifer," Dr. Hoffman said. "She's going through a custody battle. I thought maybe you could talk to her, Sarah. Share your story." Sarah saw herself in Jennifer's exhausted eyes, the same desperation, the same fear. She thought of all the women still trapped in the system that had nearly destroyed her. "Come in," Sarah said. "I'll make coffee. Kids, why don't you show Dr. Hoffman your Lego city?" As Jennifer sat at her kitchen table, crying over custody documents, Sarah made a decision. The documentary filmmakers who'd been calling, the journalists wanting interviews, the book deals she'd turned down. Maybe it was time to reconsider. Not for money or fame, but for the Jennifers of the world. "It feels hopeless," Jennifer whispered. "It feels that way," Sarah agreed. "But feeling and being are different things. Let me tell you what I learned." She talked about documenting everything, about finding the right lawyer, about protecting yourself while fighting for your children, about the importance of therapy, not as weakness but as strength, about how sometimes the system fails, but that doesn't mean you stop fighting. "Did you win?" Jennifer asked. Sarah looked at her children, laughing with Dr. Hoffman, building their Lego world piece by piece. "I survived," she said. "My children survived. We're together." That's its own kind of victory. As Jennifer left with resources, phone numbers, and hope, Sarah realized this was her purpose now. Not just healing, but helping others navigate the system that had almost swallowed her whole. That night, as she tucked her children into bed, Emma asked, "Mommy, why did all the bad things happen?" Sarah had wrestled with that question every day. She could say it made them stronger, but that felt like justifying trauma. She could say it was unfair, but that offered no comfort. "I don't know, baby," she said finally. "Sometimes bad things happen to good people. But we choose what to do next. We choose whether to let it break us or whether to grow. And look at us, we're growing." "Like flowers?" Noah asked sleepily. "Like flowers," Sarah agreed, "growing through concrete." She turned off the light, but Emma's voice stopped her. "Mommy, I love you." "I love you too, baby. Forever, forever and always." She closed the door softly, leaving it cracked so light could get in, the way they liked it now. In the living room, she opened her laptop and began typing. "My name is Sarah Mitchell. This is my story. It's a story about how the family court system failed my children and me. But it's also a story about survival, about truth, about the power of a mother's love. If you're reading this because you're trapped in your own custody nightmare, know this. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you are stronger than you know." She typed through the night, the words flowing like water through a broken dam. By morning, she'd written 20 pages, the beginning of something that might help others navigate the labyrinth that had nearly consumed her. Outside, dawn broke over Detroit, painting the sky in shades of hope and possibility. Sarah made coffee, started breakfast, and prepared for another day of healing. It wasn't the life she'd planned, but it was the life she'd fought for and won, and that, she realized, was enough. Sarah Mitchell stood at a podium in the Michigan State Capitol, addressing a room full of legislators, advocates, and survivors. Behind her, a banner read "Coalition for Family Court Reform." In the audience, her children, now 11, sat with Dr. Hoffman, who'd become more friend than therapist over the years. The Family Court Reform Act of 2029, Sarah read from her prepared statement, would require mandatory recording of all custody evaluations, independent review of psychological assessments, and financial disclosure from all court-appointed officials. It won't prevent all tragedies, but it will make them harder to orchestrate. The bill had taken 3 years to draft, built on the stories of hundreds of parents who'd contacted Sarah after her memoir became an unexpected bestseller. The documentary had won an Emmy. The foundation she'd started with the book proceeds had helped 50 families navigate custody battles. But none of that compared to the small victories. Tyler making the honor roll, Noah joining the school choir, Emma writing an essay about heroes and choosing her mother. Questions? Sarah asked the committee. A senator raised his hand. Ms. Mitchell, your ex-husband has claimed this bill is vindictive, targeting him specifically. Sarah almost laughed. Ryan serving 3 years in minimum security for tax fraud, the only charge that stuck, still trying to control the narrative. Senator, this bill isn't about revenge. It's about prevention. No parent should have to live stream their own destruction to protect their children. No child should be treated as an experiment. The system should protect the vulnerable, not enable their abuse. And Dr. Blake? She's filed a defamation suit against you. Vanessa, practicing in Florida under supervision, still fighting to salvage her reputation. I've only told the truth, documented and verified. If that's defamation, then our legal system has bigger problems than family court. The hearing continued for 2 hours. Sarah answered every question with hard-won expertise, statistics memorized, cases cited. She'd become what she'd never wanted to be, an expert on systematic failure. Afterward, her children ran to her. They were taller now, growing into their own people with their own dreams. The therapy continued, probably always would in some form, but they were thriving. You did great, Mom, Emma said, now the protective older sister by minutes, but taking the role seriously. Can we get pizza? Tyler asked, ever practical. With extra cheese, Noah added, finally comfortable voicing his wants. Whatever you want, Sarah agreed, gathering them close. As they walked to the car, Sarah's phone buzzed with notifications. Messages from parents across the country, thanking her, asking for advice, sharing their own battles. She'd answer them all eventually, connecting them with resources, lawyers, therapists who actually helped. But right now, she had pizza to buy and children to love. They drove through Detroit, past the courthouse where everything had fallen apart, past the apartment where they'd started over, past the lake where Ryan's house once stood, now sold to cover his legal fees. Mom, Emma said suddenly, do you ever think about if none of it had happened? If Dad hadn't, you know? Sarah considered lying, painting a pretty picture. But her children deserve truth. Sometimes. But then we wouldn't be who we are now. We wouldn't be as strong, as aware, as committed to helping others. I wish you hadn't suffered. I wish I could have protected you better. But I don't wish us away, who we've become. We're survivors, Tyler said matter-of-factly. We're more than that, Noah added quietly. We're healers, too. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Her broken, beautiful children who'd learned too young that love could be weaponized but refused to let it make them hard. Yes, she said, we're healers, too. They ate pizza in a crowded restaurant, laughing at silly jokes, planning summer vacation, living the ordinary life that had once seemed impossible. Other families surrounded them, some happy, some stressed, some clearly struggling. Sarah recognized the signs now, the exhausted single parents, the children walking on eggshells, the forced smiles hiding fear. After dinner, as they headed home, Emma asked, Mom, will the bill pass? I don't know, baby. Politics is complicated. But you'll keep fighting? Sarah thought of Jennifer, who'd won custody of her daughter, of the fathers' rights group that had joined their coalition, of the judges who'd reached out privately, admitting the system needed reform, of the thousands of children trapped in custody battles designed to hurt rather than help. Yes, she said, I'll keep fighting. We all will, Tyler said firmly. Together, Noah added. Together, Sarah agreed. They drove home through the Detroit dusk, a family forged in fire but not consumed by it. The radio played softly, a song about redemption and second chances. This time, Sarah didn't turn it off. The war for her children was over. The battle for all children had just begun. And Sarah Mitchell, who'd once believed she was nothing without Ryan, had discovered she was everything without him. A mother, a survivor, a voice for the voiceless, a force that would not be silenced again.